There's a strange kind of panic that rises in the modern world when a man goes quiet. Not when he's angry, not when he's cold, but when he's at peace. Because somewhere along the way, a man's calm stopped being comforting. It became threatening. He doesn't shout, he doesn't argue. He simply chooses silence. And that silence, the kind born from self-control, not detachment, shakes everything around him. You see, most people are addicted to noise. They crave reaction. They feed off conflict. They feel alive through chaos. So when a man stops engaging, when he no longer takes the bait, it's like pulling oxygen from a fire. The flames panic. That's why modern women, raised in a culture that rewards emotional drama, often confuse peace with punishment. They mistake distance for indifference, stillness for disinterest. Because for years they were taught that attention, even in the form of conflict, equals love. But when a man chooses peace, that entire equation collapses. He no longer feeds the cycle. He doesn't argue to prove his love. He doesn't explain to earn understanding. He simply is. And that stillness, that masculine composure, exposes everything. It reveals who was there for connection and who was there for control. It shows who loved the man and who only loved the reaction he gave. See, modern relationships have become performances. Each person waiting for the other to react first. But a man who's found peace no longer plays. He doesn't need to. He's done performing. And that's what creates the panic. Because peace removes the illusion of power. You can't manipulate a man who doesn't argue. You can't control a man who doesn't chase. You can't guilt a man who's made peace with walking away. So when he chooses stillness, the people around him project chaos. Not because he's wrong, but because his calm reveals their imbalance. A peaceful man holds a mirror to emotional immaturity. He exposes how much noise others need just to feel something. And that reflection is uncomfortable. He's not ignoring her. He's not punishing her. He's protecting himself from the kind of energy that thrives on reaction. Because peace is expensive. And every time he argued, over-explained, or defended himself, he was paying with his sanity. So, he stopped. And in that quiet, he discovered something most men never do. That silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. It's the art of choosing calm over chaos, focus over frenzy, purpose over performance. The world doesn't know how to handle that yet. Because a man who chooses peace can't be predicted, provoked, or controlled. He moves differently. He speaks less. And yet, he carries more presence than ever before. That's the fear. Not of his silence, but of what it represents. Power, discipline, freedom. Because the man who no longer reacts is the man who finally sees. We live in an age where noise has become normal. Every scroll, every notification, every argument online. Constant stimulation disguised as connection. People don't talk to understand anymore. They talk to be heard. They don't listen to feel. They listen to react. And in that chaos, peace feels alien, even threatening. Modern relationships reflect that same rhythm, fast, loud, and fleeting. Affection is replaced with attention. Commitment is replaced with convenience. And conflict becomes the glue that holds everything together. Because drama gives people what peace can't. Adrenaline. And once someone becomes addicted to that, calm starts to feel like emptiness. That's why when a man chooses stillness, when he steps out of the emotional storm, it sends shockwaves through the system. He's not playing the game anymore. He's not matching energy or proving his worth through reaction. He's unplugged from the cycle. And that's the one thing chaos can't handle. Being ignored. You see, the modern world has trained us to equate noise with meaning. If it's quiet, it must be dead. If it's peaceful, it must be boring. If he's not chasing, he must not care. But men who've lived through enough chaos know better. They've been in the endless debates, the emotional tug-of-war, the shouting matches where love gets drowned out by ego. And they've seen what that kind of love costs. It costs focus. It costs peace. It costs identity. So they stop. They stop reacting to every emotional storm that passes their way. They stop trying to save relationships that only survive on drama. They stop mistaking chaos for passion. Because a man who's lived long enough in noise learns that peace isn't passive. It's power under control. He doesn't disappear to escape. He disappears to reset, to rebuild himself from the inside out. To remember what it feels like, to breathe without tension. And while the world keeps spinning in chaos, people posting every emotion, chasing every argument, he moves quietly, focused, grounded. But here's the irony. His peace exposes everyone else's chaos. It shows how restless they really are. Because peace doesn't make noise. It reveals who can't live without it. So when a man chooses stillness, modern women, conditioned to equate emotional intensity with love, feel panic. Not because he's leaving, but because his calm is showing them how loud they've become. It's not rejection. It's reflection. He's not trying to control her. He's mastering himself. And mastery in a world addicted to reaction looks like rebellion. Because this is the age of constant chaos, and a peaceful man is the rarest revolution left. There comes a point when a man's peace stops looking like distance and starts radiating like power. Because peace, real peace, isn't quiet weakness. It's control. The man who can stay calm when everything around him demands reaction becomes dangerous in a world addicted to noise. He doesn't compete. He doesn't chase. He doesn't explain. He simply observes and acts with precision. And that composure shifts everything. The same people who once overlooked him now feel uneasy around him. They can sense it. Something's changed. He no longer plays the emotional games they used to win with. He doesn't respond to guilt. He doesn't reward chaos. He doesn't negotiate his peace. Because he's learned that reaction is currency. And he's done giving it away. That's the power of peace. It breaks the economy of control. When you can't be provoked, you can't be manipulated. When you stop defending yourself, you stop giving power to judgment. And when you stop needing to be understood, you become untouchable. Women feel that shift instantly. Not because he's cruel, but because he's centered. His calm becomes magnetic. His silence speaks louder than charm. He's not seeking validation anymore. He's radiating presence. The man who once chased is now followed. Not by desperation, but by curiosity. Because peace in a man creates polarity. It's a contrast to the emotional chaos that dominates modern relationships. He's not emotionally absent. He's emotionally sovereign. And sovereignty is the rarest form of attraction. He doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard. He doesn't need to prove his worth to feel valued. His discipline becomes his aura. His self-control becomes his language. That's what modern women feel when a man chooses peace. They feel their influence dissolve. Not because he's punishing them, but because he's no longer orbiting their emotions. He's centered in his own. And that calm, that quiet, that focus, it terrifies and intrigues them all at once. Because deep down, every person craves stability. But few can handle what true stability looks like. Consistency without chaos. Predictability without drama. Peace without performance. He's not trying to be mysterious. He's just mastered something rare. Control over himself. And that kind of control changes everything. It shifts conversations. It reshapes relationships. It redefines attraction. Because peace isn't passive. It's a statement. It says, I don't need to win arguments to win in life. It says, I'm no longer competing for comfort. I create it. It says, I've chosen myself. And that's not arrogance. That's alignment. When peace becomes power, a man no longer looks for love to calm him. He is the calm. And the world can't decide whether to fear him or follow him. When a man stops chasing validation, the world around him shifts. especially the people who once relied on his approval to feel secure. Because validation is power, and for years he gave it away freely, with every compliment, every reassurance, every attempt to prove he was enough. He didn't realize that each time he did, he was training others to depend on his attention while disconnecting from his own. But when he finally pulls that energy back, the silence is deafening. Suddenly she doesn't hear the constant, "You're beautiful." She doesn't get the daily emotional feedback loop that used to confirm her worth. And that absence, that void, feels like rejection. Not because he's punishing her, but because peace, in a man, removes the emotional fuel that keeps certain dynamics alive. Modern society has built itself on validation addiction. Social media, relationships, even conversations, all engineered around one need: see me, like me, respond to me. But when a man stops feeding that system, when he no longer reacts, praises, or competes for attention, he exposes how dependent everyone has become on being noticed. It's not that he stopped caring. He just stopped performing. He realized that validation isn't love, it's leverage. And whoever needs it least holds the power. That's why his peace creates panic. Because the same women who once measured their value by his response now have to face themselves without reflection. They look for the emotional mirror he used to hold, and it's gone. The compliments stop. The constant reassurance disappears. The energy they once absorbed is redirected inward. And that shift is disorienting. They'll say, "He's changed." But what they really mean is, "He stopped feeding my ego." Because a peaceful man doesn't validate dysfunction. He doesn't reinforce insecurity to keep the peace. He doesn't give attention just to avoid tension. His silence, his calm, his detachment, all of it creates space for truth. And truth is uncomfortable when you've built identity on reaction. So, what happens in the validation void? The roles reverse. He becomes the steady one. She becomes the seeker. The same energy he once poured outward now draws everything back in. Because energy never disappears. It just changes direction. And when a man reclaims his, everything that was built on dependency starts to crumble. She'll wonder why he's so calm, why he doesn't fight, why he doesn't reassure. And the answer is simple. He's done begging to be enough for people who never learn to be content within themselves. He's not withholding love. He's protecting value, because validation can be stolen. But self-worth, once reclaimed, can't be touched. And that's the void no one can fill for him anymore. Something begins to stir inside him the moment he stops looking outward for peace. It's quiet at first, a hum, a pulse, a slow remembering of who he was before the world told him who to be. This is the masculine reawakening. He's not angry. He's not bitter. He's aware. For years he believed his strength existed only in how much he could give, how much he could sacrifice, how hard he could fight to hold everything together. But now he sees the truth. Real strength isn't about holding on. It's about letting go. With clarity, not resentment. He no longer seeks approval from a world that profits from his confusion. He no longer apologizes for wanting peace, structure, or solitude. He's no longer ashamed of discipline. Because he's learned that masculinity was never the problem. The lack of direction was. Now that direction returns. He starts rebuilding his empire. Not out of ego, but out of order. He gets his body right, his finances right, his mind right. He starts walking differently, not faster, not louder, but firmer, and people can feel it. The same world that once told him to be softer now tells him he's changed. But he hasn't changed. He's just remembered. The man who was buried under expectations, arguments, and constant compromise begins to rise again, calm, focused, and unbothered. He stops wasting words on people who can't understand silence. He stops defending himself to those who twist his intent. He stops proving his worth through exhaustion. Because when a man reclaims his peace, he reclaims his purpose. And purpose is what modern life tried to strip away from him. That's why his focus feels threatening. Because it's pure. He's not chasing pleasure anymore. He's chasing mastery. He's not looking for escape. He's looking for expansion. His happiness no longer depends on who texts back. His mood no longer depends on who approves. His fulfillment comes from the quiet victories, the weights lifted, the goals met, the habits formed, the stillness earned. And that's what makes him powerful again. The man who once sought validation through chaos now generates meaning through order. He's not running from women, he's running toward himself. And the irony is, that's when women start to notice him most. Not because he's performing, but because he's present. Presence. That's the true essence of masculinity. It's not dominance, it's direction. It's not control over others, it's control over self. He's not trying to be above anyone, he's trying to be aligned. Because when a man aligns with peace, everything he wants moves toward him naturally. This is what happens when he reawakens, when he reclaims his stillness, his focus, and his silence. He doesn't shout anymore. He doesn't chase anymore. He simply becomes. At some point, the war ends. Not because he won, but because he stopped fighting battles that never mattered. This is where balance returns. The man who once lived on edge, chasing love, defending his worth, reacting to every storm, now lives in rhythm with himself. He's not chasing highs anymore. He's maintaining harmony. And that balance changes how he moves through the world. He doesn't need to prove he's a good man. He just is one. His kindness no longer comes from fear of loss. It comes from inner stability. His silence is no longer withdrawal. It's wisdom. His strength no longer comes from aggression. It comes from restraint. Because peace has taught him something love never could. You can't connect deeply with anyone until you've connected fully with yourself. He no longer blames women or society or his past. He's not angry at the noise anymore. He just refuses to live inside it. And that shift, that calm detachment, gives him power over his own story again. He can love without losing himself. He can give without being emptied. He can walk away without hate. Because balance isn't about being untouched by emotion. It's about not being owned by it. He now understands that true masculinity isn't rebellion. It's responsibility. Not the kind that carries the world on his back, but the kind that guards his peace like a kingdom. He's selective with his energy, careful with his attention, intentional with his words. And in doing so, he redefines what love means. Love is no longer chaos. It's no longer drama or dependency. It's alignment. Two whole people meeting without trying to complete each other. That's what peace does. It filters. It clears out everything built on noise so that only truth remains. Now, when he meets someone, he doesn't ask, "Will she love me?" He asks, "Can she live peacefully beside me?" And if the answer is no, he doesn't fight to change it. He simply walks away, quietly, gracefully, because the man who's found balance knows that not every bond deserves to be kept. He's not bitter. He's better. He's not colder. He's clearer. He doesn't seek power anymore. He is power. Because peace is power. And in a world where chaos is currency, that makes him untouchable. This is what happens when men choose peace. The noise fades. The masks fall. And the world finally meets the man beneath it all. Not the chaser, not the fighter, but the creator. The man who stopped reacting and started becoming.